Good morning, everyone. My name is McCloskey, and welcome to the 2025 Career and Internship Expo panel, brought to you by Apache News. Today, we're diving into different career paths to help you explore your options for the future. Our panelists come from a variety of industries and will share their journeys, the challenges, the wins, and what they love about their work. This is your chance to get real-life advice about the world after high school. Let's kick things off by introducing our panelists.
Hi, my name is Eric Liang. I am a lawyer by trade. I've worked in a variety of industries, mainly in entertainment. I started off at a law firm as a litigator, and my career has taken me to places like Netflix and Disney, and I currently work with the Com app, where I do celebrity sleep stories and handle all of the business affairs for the company.
Hi, I'm Renee Benora. I'm the immediate past president at the Arcadia Association of Realtors. I'm the operations manager and a realtor at Pinnacle Real Estate Group. I'm a mom of four, and I have two girls here, a junior and a sophomore at Arcadia High. I'm also an Arcadia High alum.
Hello, my name is Neil Legaspi. I am a project coordinator from Molina Healthcare of California. I currently work in the industry of health insurance and healthcare. I previously worked in the state. I also worked for Blue Shield of California. I did logistics for Sunkist. And I've been in a few other places in between, and it's been a long journey, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Good morning, guys. My name is Miranda Tu. I am a pediatrician, so I'm a doctor for children. I work for Optum here in Arcadia, so hi, everyone. Good morning.
Okay, let's kick this off by asking the first question. Can you tell us about your career journey? How did you get started, and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to talk about that. I'm actually also a graduate of Arcadia High, class of '93, which mainly just makes me old. But that's where I started, and like many other people here, I thought I'd be a STEM kid or something. I thought I'd be a doctor, but I started doing things like chemistry. I wasn't good at it, kind of sucked at it, to be honest. Physics, not really my thing. And I didn't believe it. Right, I went to college and I was like, I'm still going to be a doctor or something. And it turned out, chemistry hated me even more in college than it hated me in high school. So, I had to look for something else. I was on the government team back in the day. We won the national championship in 1993. Woo, virtual cheers somewhere. It was one of those things where, look, I obviously am more into writing and speaking. And, law school became a little bit of a default for me. And so, one thing that I would say is that, everyone should find something that, plays to their strengths. If your mom wants you to be a doctor and it's just not you, like, you don't have to be a doctor. I know I'm going to be hated by a bunch of, parents for this, but, it's sort of true because you're really setting yourself up for success. Or for failure, not success. Sorry, Mom.
Too late to get out. Hi. So with my career journey, I made a lot of changes. Right after Arcadia High, I did go to PCC for 2 years, which was a really great experience. But from there, I went on to USC and I studied business administration because I always knew that I would go into some type of field of business. I knew that since I was a little kid. I went a couple of different directions in different industries, and finally I went into real estate. One of the reasons was because of our family business was in real estate, but also it was the flexible career. And then also I had some experiences and I wanted to kind of give the new image and raise the bar in our industry. And so I went into real estate, and from there I went into management in real estate, and you really can be your own entrepreneur there. And that's what really took me and drew me there. And really the sky's the limit to what you can earn and what you can do. And so that's what really motivates me.
So I would say that my career very much did start in high school with volunteer work. I did volunteer at Keck USC in high school, and post-high school during college, I worked a lot. Not in the industry I am. I actually used to work in student IT, which let me know that that's not where I was going to end up. And then during that, towards the end of college, I also ended up getting an internship for the state where I worked for the Department of Public Health for California. It was there that I really met someone that I think is very important for my career journey, which was my director at the time, Shaniam and Evan. He really inspired me to look at healthcare and the administrative work that happens there in a very different lens. And it also gave me a very hard look into all the bureaucratics of what is the government, which was very interesting when it came to healthcare. After that, I did float between different jobs, trying to mostly make sure I was advancing my career, gaining work experience, which ended up pushing me in the direction of wanting to pursue higher education, where I did go back and I got my master's degree from Cal State LA in healthcare management. Post that, I worked at Providence, where I got to see an even closer look at what healthcare looks like on the administrative side and how much of a barrier that can be for our clinicians, which really kind of just re-emphasized my drive to try to make things smoother for them, because they're the ones who deal with direct care. So they're the ones that we need to be supporting best, which led me to where I am now at Molina Healthcare.
So for me, unlike Eric, I like science and science likes me. So ever since I was in high school, like I just love like bio and chemistry. And then the other thing is I really like working with kids. So in college, I was already thinking that I want to work with children. And I was kind of leaning between like science middle school teacher or pediatrician. And it really just depended on like overall grades and applications. And so I think for me, it's really enjoying science and kids. So it kind of brought together where I am today as a pediatrician. So if your parents want you to be a lawyer, I'm just kidding. You gotta do what you know. So I think you gotta, that's where, so science and kids, that's how I am where I am today.
Okay, thank you all for that. The next question is, what education or training did you need to get where you are today? Did you take a traditional path, or was there an alternative route to your field?
Well, for me, being a lawyer by training, I obviously had to go to law school. Look, I was nerdy enough. I got into Berkeley. I got into Duke. Started working at a big law firm, and I sort of found my way into entertainment. Largely by luck. And this is something that I'm going to tell people too, is that, like you can have all the credentials in the world. I got my first job in entertainment because I interviewed at Paramount Pictures, and the guy who was going to be my boss, he did go to Berkeley. And the guy who is his boss, the only other interview I had, he went to Duke. And during those interviews, I literally just talked about Cal football and Duke basketball. And lawyers are actually terrible interviewers. Like, all they want to know is like, hey, can I stand being around this guy for like eight hours a day? And, I guess I passed that test, right? But it also shows how much being in the right place at the right time is important. It shows how important networking is, whether it's through your schools or through other people not everything is a meritocracy. I don't think I'm a particularly great lawyer. I have some very cool jobs that I've done. But to me, it's one thing that I find really important. It's not just about the education and training. Like, one of my coworkers went to, I have these kind of fancier degrees, but, I have a coworker who went to Cal State LA and went to Southwestern Law School here. And, we're all in the same place, and so, a lot of it is about the relationships you make and luck. I'm just going to be perfectly honest. That's a big part of it. But, finding training in a field that you can tolerate or, you don't mind doing is, of course, the basic foundation.
Being a realtor, you don't need a degree. However, it's constant training and education. Our field is constantly changing. Laws are being passed. We're being sued. We have to change direction. And some people stay and some people leave. It's a difficult industry. So you're constantly learning. But like I said, I went into business at USC and I received a degree there. That actually did help me. Being a realtor and being successful at that, you can do that. But I was offered a management position, and I don't know if I would have been offered that position if I hadn't had, the degree and the experience that I had in management as well, because that helped shape me.
Education and training. I find this a very interesting point because I am still very much figuring out everything needed for my field. But I will say one of the things that has been clear is my bachelor's degree and my master's degree did allow me leeway where others might have found more difficulty. I do know that my master's degree really helps with my ceiling in terms of like corporate America and what I qualify for on paper. But it was very clear very early on that my degree is not everything. And to be fair, it's at most half. The training and the experience you need is equally as important. So it's as other panelists have echoed, it's very important to put yourself out there. Sometimes you just got to talk to the right person. So for me, it was very much that. And currently, it's just like I feel grateful for my master's degree and how it prepared me to look at laws and how they change, as well as how to look at healthcare companies, industries, and management, and how there is an ideal. And even though that ideal is not always reached, it gives me an archetype of how I can operate. But when it comes to training, education doesn't stop. You keep learning, especially if you want to excel in your field, even if it's something more niche or something more general. I currently am getting my Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, which is just another certification. I'm also looking at my project management certification. There's just always more, and it really depends on where you want to be, which will determine how much you really need.
So I think for those of you who are interested in being medicine, it is a long educational road. So I went to Davis for 4 years. So undergrad is 4 to 5 years. Most med students now take a year or two off to do other things. But if you go straight through, like you go to medical school, it's 4 years. So I went to Chicago Medical School. After the 4 years, you have to do a match in your residency. So my residency was in pediatrics. The residency for pediatrics is 3 years for primary care. But if you're interested in like surgery or ER or dermatology, other things, those residencies can range from like 4 years to 7 years or longer. Like brain surgeons are like 8 years. So depending what you want to go into, your residency or training after is really focused on what you're doing. So my residency was at UCLA, so I moved back to California and spent 3 years there doing only pediatrics, so only working with children. So that puts us at about, after high school, 7 to 8 years. And then you start getting paid in residency. So you just earn a little bit of money while you work really hard. But then you finish and you find your first job, and it takes, again, to echo everyone else too, like we're always learning. Things are always changing, like the laws are always changing. The medical field is always changing. There's always advances. There's new diseases. Like when COVID hit, it was like everyone was like, what's going on? No one knows what to do. So it's a life, like I think if you like learning and keep learning, like a lot of our jobs are like lifelong learners. So we're just always interested in learning, and if you like it, it's worth the long journey if you like it.
Our next question is, what does a typical day in your job look like? What are some of your main tasks and responsibilities?
First, I'd like to say these other three panelists are all so much smarter than I am. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit about what lawyers do, because, you know, a lot of lawyers work in law firms, and that's where a lot of them are litigators. That means they're in courtrooms. They get hired to do specific legal tasks. Maybe it's someone writing a trust and a will for your family, things like that. I work in-house. I work for a company. And even then, like, I've worn so many hats and done so many things, because there are a lot of different aspects to law that, you know, that sometimes when you work at a corporation, you're asked to touch all of them. So, for instance, when I was working at a law firm, you know, I literally represented clients in business disputes, usually breach of contract and things like that. When I moved on, I'll tell you, when I was at Netflix, first thing I did there was I helped Netflix buy the rights to the Chronicles of Narnia, which is currently in development. I did all the negotiations and hired all of the actors for Avatar: The Last Airbender and One Piece. Those are like the cool things that I do, right? But there are other things, which is that, hey, sometimes, you know, we're filming a scene in Dubai. Hey, does anyone know what the laws of Dubai are? And the answer is nobody knows. Not even people who live in Dubai probably know what the laws are. Just don't break them, because you'll probably go to jail forever. I don't know if you can edit that out. But anyway, I mean, you know, so there are a lot of like menial things that can be part of it, and there are high level things. Like over at Calm, we have things like celebrity sleep stories and partnerships. You know, we're doing things with LeBron James, Blackpink, Harry Styles. At the same time, there are people out there who are looking to sue calm, and I manage our litigation. As someone who used to do a lot of courtroom type work, I help manage our strategies and our defenses. I also manage a lot of our, I've mentioned it before, business affairs, which is just all of our contracts, right? Because lawyers, in addition to fighting with each other in the courtroom, what a lot of the work you do is contracts, which are just basically promises to each other, right? You want to make sure that if LeBron James is going to record something for you, he shows up, right? And so I manage a team that handles all of our contracts, and a lot of them aren't glamorous. Like they might be business to business type of deals. Like for instance, the Calm app is provided to all members of the California Teachers Association. So all of you Arcadia High teachers, the Calm app is available, and it's because of a contract. Yeah, no, it's not just a shameless plug. It is a little bit, but it is available, and that's the kind of thing I do. Is we help provide that service to people.
A typical day for me in real estate is not typical. There's actually no really typical day because, I'm a realtor, but I'm also an operations manager. So the only part that kind of stays consistent is the management portion. And so I have many offices. I have my office at work. I have my office at home. I have my car, which is an office. And then sometimes I, crash at different places, or even if I'm out to eat, with my kids, they know that when mama's on the phone, everybody stays quiet. And so it's a 24-hour, job really, because, if I'm working with buyers, then they're not available to start working or to really look until after their shift's over, which is after 5 o'clock on the weekdays and on the weekends. So it's a 24/7 job, and you really have to be available. In the operations side, I manage many different departments at Pinnacle. We are the biggest real estate company in Arcadia, and we have multiple departments. And so I oversee those departments and mergers and other operations. And with the systems, I'm also in charge of how they all function. So it's great to have good support. That's why I love my kids, and they love me too.
Okay, what does a typical day look like? I think if I was going to make this 5 seconds, which I'm not, I would say I tell people what to do. And to elaborate on that, as a project coordinator, essentially my day-to-day tasks will change day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, depending on what projects are going on regarding my specific responsibilities, which is HADIS measures for healthcare and health insurance. So if we have campaigns going on for February, well, we have campaigns going on pretty much every month. So depending on the campaign, that'll be me talking to San Diego. It'll be me talking to a program manager in Sacramento. It'll be me talking to the program manager in Long Beach, and basically letting them know what the timelines are, what responsibilities are required, what documentation is needed. And then there's a data aspect to it where I do get information from the data team, and then I do overlook and check information. I do QA, so quality assurance of it, to look at we don't have duplicates and that all members are being seen and that we have as diverse list as we can. And we're just trying to cover these campaigns to see how many people we can see at a given time and event. And that really is a lot of emails, a lot of messages, and phone calls letting people know that, hey, your timeline was due maybe yesterday, today, end of day, and making sure things are moving as smoothly as possible so we don't encounter more hiccups down the line or have an event that starts late. It's just a lot of timelines and organization.
So I'm sure all of you have been to the doctor. So that's me. I see newborns until college, 18 to 20. So there's a huge range of advice and patient care. Most of the time, kids are very healthy, so we're just making sure you guys stay healthy. But a lot of times too, we see kids that are sick, like common cold stuff or ear infections, skin infections. We also do treat mental health things. We treat, we're always on the lookout for the worst case scenario things. If, very rarely but kids do get cancers or, tumors. So we are always watching out for those things as well. I would call myself a partner to your parents in raising you guys healthily, sleeping, eating, habits, exercise, all that good stuff. On some weeks, I do go to Huntington Memorial Hospital. Over there, I do see that we do see newborns in the hospital. So once the baby's born, we go to the hospital to check on the new babies and make sure they're healthy. And then from there, they usually come to our office and we continue our relationship and care for the 18 to 20 years. Some patients I've seen I've been working for now 13 years, so I've seen them since they were born, and then they get siblings. So my job is very relationship based and making sure that I help the parents raise healthy kids.
Thank you all. Okay, the next question is, what is the biggest challenge you faced in your career? How did you overcome it, and what did you learn from the experience?
Sure. For me, it's actually pretty easy. I've lost my job a bunch of times, like 4 times. I mean, you'd think people would figure it out by now, but luckily it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I worked at a law firm. There's a .com stock market crash in the early 2000s. Again, I'm old, so it's like, but I lost my job. I worked in another place just kind of in between. They sold electrical parts, not electronic parts. I mean, like copper wire and light bulbs, and then they moved to Texas, and I wasn't invited to go with them to Texas. And then I worked at Paramount, and Paramount used to lay people off all the time. I survived for like 7 years. People were calling me a cockroach, like they couldn't kill me. And then it was my turn. And like each time this stuff happens, it kind of stinks, right? I mean, you feel like you're valued. You understand, okay, bad economic stuff going on. Maybe not your fault, but like they could have kept you, or they did the previous years. And even actually, I'll tell you, at Netflix, I lost my job there. Like my job was eliminated because they reorganized. And, that was the most interesting one, because when it happened at Netflix, an hour later, someone in another department at Netflix said, "What is going on? I want you to come work for us right now. We're going to call HR. We're going to make this happen." And what was really crazy is that during that hour, I had 3 different job offers come up from friends and friends of friends. People, Netflix, by the way, is notorious for laying people off and constantly reorging. So there's this club called the X-Flixers, and I guess they all look out for each other. Everyone finds out immediately, and then they say, "Hey, you want to come work over here?" So I actually had a chance to go back to Disney. I had a chance to go work at Warner Brothers or the Calm app. Which you can see this is what happened, and what it really showed me again was something I talked a bit about earlier, which was kind of the value of having connections and networking, right? I mean, it's that. I mean, the first thing that's been great, and I've been very fortunate with, is that every job I've gotten after losing one has been better than the previous one, which I know that's really rare. I'm really blessed to have that be the case. But as I went on this last time, the only reason I was so well taken care of is because of the relationships I had made. I keep in touch with people. I'm a pleasant colleague to work with, apparently. I know. Thanks for laughing so quickly, Mirinda. But that counts. And at some point in many people's career paths, like some paths are more like you get to stay with your job for 30 years, right? Or you can be self-employed or on your own business, but a lot of us are going to be working for someone, and it's really about your people skills and your soft skills that really brings value, and that was never more clear than the last time, and when things happened at Netflix, and that led to where I am now.
So the biggest challenge I faced was actually last year when I was the president of the Arcadia Association of Realtors, and it was a challenge for me because in our industry, just like in law, you have to work well with others, and when you're representing buyers or you're representing sellers, you need to have good networking skills so that sometimes it's not the buyer or the seller that's getting the deal, it's the 2 agents that are getting the deal. So you want to make sure that you're maintaining a good balance, work relationship with other agents as well. So with that said, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being the president, and there's a lot of other factors of moving up in leadership. And so, for me, I was bombarded with people trying to have me go into a direction that they wanted me to go into. And so I had to decide whether or not I was just going to keep listening to everybody or, having my own voice be heard. And so that was an actual difficult process for me. And then you'll kind of realize as you move up into leadership, your circle it becomes smaller and smaller. You'll have less and less friends, and it does become lonely at the top, in a sense. But it's also a good place to reflect on who you are, and you will start to attract, I think, the right people at that time. So that's what I learned from it. It was a challenge, but it was a great growth experience as well.
Biggest challenge. I'm not sure if I have any one specific one, but I can think of a few. And one of them would basically be if you work and you find yourself working in the field of logistics, prepare for a lot of problems. When I worked in logistics for Sunkist, it was when I was still earlier in my career, fresher out of college. And I was very used to usually succeeding at what I do. And it was pretty much a very clear rude awakening of everything that can go wrong will go wrong. And essentially everything from inspections to the delivery to everything that was required for a certain product movement, it all fell apart. And it was just like phone calls for 8 straight hours and figuring out what to do with product that couldn't be given. And it was just something that like kind of shook me as someone who I felt like I'd always done fairly well. And it just felt like I was just massive failure. My bosses were very kind, but it was still very clear, like, I've got to figure it out. And I think that was very much one of those things that everyone encounters at some point in their career where you're like, okay, I am the sole responsible person for this. There's no one else that I can blame this on, and I have to be accountable. But more importantly, you've got to learn to be flexible. You've got to learn to be more flexible is the best word I'm looking for right now, but you basically learn that like there's always going to be challenges, and some of them may hurt you more than you expect. And that's also an important thing to learn to distinguish the separation of your life and your career, because your career does not have to be your whole life. Yes, they can be intertwined. Yes, they can be a lot of who you are, but it's not your whole personality. And it helped me learn that like, yeah, it's like I want to succeed. I do want to have a thriving career, but at the same time, just because I fail at my job doesn't mean I'm a failure as a person.
So for me, I think the biggest challenge was, number one, during residency, you really don't get a lot of sleep, so it's kind of tiring. But I do think nowadays they have different rules for work hours, so you actually like are limited to work 24 hours, not 40 straight hours. The other one though is kind of more like what you were saying about like balancing family and life. So like my husband also is a doctor, so the two of us trying to have kids, in my mind I was like, how do we balance this out? Like how do we work and be on call and have kids? And I think as you get older, you're not thinking about this now, but as you get older into your career, a big part of life is like balancing like family life and work life, and trying to understand like that they're both important. You know, they both are necessary and related, but and somehow people make it work. Like, you know, we're both really busy at work, but we're able to, you know, still spend time with the kids. We have dinner together. Like, it's not like we're always like on call or at the hospital. So I think trying to balance that all is probably the biggest challenge in life. You know, now that the kids are high schoolers and older, it's much easier. But when they were like 5 and 3, when they were much younger, it was definitely more challenging to try to balance that work-life balance. So I think that's, for me, the biggest challenge as like a working mom and working dad.
The next question is, what is a common myth or misconception about your job? Is there something people assume about your career that isn't true?
Sure, I'll give a couple of misconceptions. I mean, one is that all lawyers are rich, or that like, you know, they make a lot of money. They don't actually. I took a big pay cut when I went from a law firm to doing much cooler work in-house. So that's one kind of thing there. But there are a lot of people who are lawyers out there, and you know, they figure, oh, I have a law degree, it's going to be great. Except that you might be like $200,000 or $300,000 in debt, and it turns out that anyone can get a law degree, because there are like bad law schools that just pop up everywhere. And if you pay, they'll happily take your money, and you're not going to have any training. You're going to get out, and no one's going to hire you, or someone hires you and they're going to pay you, you know, hardly anything. You're not going to be able to pay back your loan or something. And that happens. And especially it's even worse if you also have like college debt, right? And so, for me, I always tell people, like, before they go to law school, like, you should know whether you want to be a lawyer or not. You should know what your career options might be, including coming out of the school that you might choose. Because otherwise, you might be out there, because there are definitely people who are not working as lawyers, but they have these useless law degrees, and they're not getting paid. They're not going anywhere. And so that's one thing, that I want to make clear. Again, it's not a pure meritocracy. You could go to Harvard, undergrad, Harvard Law, and be stuck in a miserable dead-end job. You could go to Podunk Law School, Southwest North Dakota State. Sorry if anyone's from North Dakota, but I mean, you could do that, and maybe you luck your way into a great job. Like, I actually am somewhat useless sometimes, because I don't have like any secret sauce or formula for how you can end up with a job like mine, other than, I don't know, be in the right place at the right time. So that's one thing that I just want to tell people, is that like, just be a little aware of what you're getting into, and know that there are no guarantees. The other thing that I would talk about is that, some people think, oh, you have to have a big personality to be a lawyer. You probably see it on like, some kind of like series or something, or a movie where the lawyer goes into court and he like kind of yells at people, bullies the witness, all that stuff. No, I mean, there are some lawyers who do that, and there are others who talk calmly. What I do is, I'm not destructive. I always think of stuff in courtroom. It's like, okay, that's a big fight, but I'm trying to bring people together, and my team that I manage, I have people who are extroverts and introverts. I have people who do things differently, but the most important thing is, are they able to negotiate? Which means just having a mature conversation with someone, right? Some people just think like, oh, that means I'm going to bargain with someone. Like, if you don't sell me this for $1,000, I'm leaving. You got to come down on the price or something. No, I mean, you have to be able to you have to be a type of person who can establish trust, because you can't bully your way into success. And that trust is both in negotiations with external partners, like someone you're negotiating against, but also sometimes with your own clients or your own customers, people that you work with all the time, where you're telling them like, yeah, I know you want to do this deal, but we're gonna go way over the budget. Like, I mean, it was a big thing when I was working on One Piece. We actually shot that for Netflix in South Africa, because it was supposed to be cheaper, but it was all during COVID, so everything was much more expensive. And so part of my job, in addition to like making things happen, was keeping costs down. And sometimes that affects who you might be able to hire as an actor, or how much you can pay that person. And at the end of the day, for this kind of lawyer that I am, it's not about walking away who's a winner or who's a loser. Everyone has to walk away feeling like a winner. And you can be an extrovert or an introvert, and you can do that as long as you can relate to the people that you're working with.
So as a realtor, when I was getting into the industry, I did start to see a lot of misconceptions, and I could feel it almost, because a lot of people think that realtors are out to scam you out of your home and, get it for a cheap price and then leave, and they're not very trustworthy. However, we're a highly regulated industry of professionals. We're actually the oldest profession, and we're the largest lobbying group in the country. There's over 1 million realtors in America. We're part of 3 organizations: a local association, we're part of the state association, and then we're a part of the national association. And only then can we actually be called a realtor. It's trademarked by the National Association of Realtors. We're regulated by the Department of Justice, and they are suing us every 4 years, and they're watching us very closely. We go by a standard of ethics. There's 17 articles that we have to follow, and so we are professional. Yes, there are people that deviate from that, just like with lawyers. There's good and bad. There's good and bad realtors. I always say I'm a good realtor's best friend and a bad realtor's worst enemy.
Thank you.
Common myth or misconception. I don't even feel like most people know about my job in general. But I would, if I had to say something, I guess it would be more of a common myth or misconception about at least the general nature of health insurance and healthcare where I work. For health insurance, the companies aren't out there to take your money. At least where I've worked, it's always seemed like that's never been the emphasis or focus. It's always been about getting patients to see people. The biggest misconception I can have on that is the fact that some people don't go to the doctor as much as they should, and they don't see their doctor as regularly as they should. So when health insurance gets blamed for that, that is where a bad rep can come from. But it does go both ways. There are times where health insurance does not operate in the best way it should. And then for healthcare, it's the same thing. People, especially doctors, they want to treat everyone as best they can. There is a litany of litigation and paperwork that has to happen nowadays that can make things very difficult. So it's never about someone not trying to give you the care you feel you need or think you want. It's them trying to figure out how to get you there in the first place. It's part of why I like my job, is trying to make that a bit smoother. And then I guess the only other misconception I can say about my job is the joke I made, which is, yes, I tell people what to do. Yes, it's not just telling. There's paperwork and documentation and, a process. Is just to summarize. It's more than that, but at the same time, it's that.
So I think people envision being a doctor like on TV, like blood, guts, like action, trauma, code blue. Most doctors are in clinics, like myself. I would say a lot of people see you in a clinic setting, not in an ER setting. So the TV docs are usually the trauma doctors or ER doctors. For a lot of us, like even specialists like radiologists, dermatologists, even OB docs, myself. So we are in clinic and we talk to people. We try to get them help and help them. Like that is our goal, to help you feel well, keep you healthy, live long, and also be happy. Like mental health is really taking a big forefront these past few years for all of our patients. So I think people think of a doctor and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. It's actually like, it's fun. I enjoy what I do, but it's definitely not like blood, guts, and surgery. My job is pretty chill, just some shots and spit up and poop. And along the lines with Eric, like medical school, like law school can be pricey. So most people have to take student loans for undergrad or grad school. So you do really have to think about before you jump in, like, is this what I want to do? Because then you'll commit yourself to, some debt. And then you'll get a job, but it's just a lifelong, you have to pay it off. So so that's something to think about when you go to medical school or any grad school, law school, dental school, pharmacy school, any grad school. You're gonna have some debt.
Okay, thank you. And for our last question, what is the biggest piece of advice that you would give high school students interested in your field?
I'm going to give two pieces. I think there are two things that I think are good to take away, and also I like to hear myself talk. So the first one is that you can honestly study anything. There's no such thing as going pre-law. So, people are like, oh, do I have to study this or that? No, and you can do whatever you want. I mean, at the end of the day, you go to law school, you give them your grades, and you give them your LSAT. It's like, what it stands for, legal SAT. It's not fancy. But it's just like high school, right? I mean, a lot of people are applying to college, and you can take whatever you want to take, and it's fine. In fact, there are certain areas of law, like patent law, which actually require you to have a STEM degree of some sort, because you're out there looking at really technical stuff that I've tried to look at it, and many of you remember from earlier today that I failed. I did poorly in chemistry. So that's the kind of thing where you can really study what you want, and that's one of the beauties of the industry. I will say that I will put a plug in for the government team, which I know still exists here. But that was kind of cool. It didn't actually make me a better lawyer or anything, but it did give me a chance to do a little more public speaking. I wasn't on speech and debate or anything like that. But it was just something that kind of got me a little. Obviously there's a study of law and government in there, so that did put me on the right track. The second thing I'd say is, that don't be afraid to fail either. A lot of us don't know what we want to do. I mean, I was actually talking to my fellow panelists here earlier that, whether you're finishing up high school or college, like people don't know what most of the jobs are out there. Like, you can, like, if you just sat down and just asked yourself to name 10 jobs, like you'd probably struggle after you went, I don't know, doctor, lawyer, real estate agent, teacher, and then you'd start running out of ideas really quick, which is why grad school exists, for a bunch of people who have no idea what to do with their lives. But the truth is that you have people like Neil. No one knows what Neil does because he's a project manager. And it's like, what is that? And I know a little more now than I did before. But, like when you're in college or high school, you don't know what that is. And sometimes it's the result of maybe you thought you wanted to be a lawyer. Then you got your LSAT score and you're like, oh, Eric told me I shouldn't go if it's going to be this crappy law school. And, I'm not going to name anything. But, or it's like maybe you were like me, you like did real chemistry really hates you and you finally figured that out when you got to college, right? And so, failing is okay if it helps you find your path. Although if you're in college and you're failing, you should drop that class before the deadline because that could hurt your grades. So, identify your failures quickly if you can, and, it can help you find the right path.
So the advice I'd give to high schoolers trying to or interested in my career, being a realtor is very difficult, being successful as a realtor. At our association, 50% of the realtors have one or less sale a year. So they're making about $20,000 or less a year. So it's going to be a struggle. And I know there's a misconception that, they're all very wealthy, but it's, it's about 1% that has most of the transactions. And so understand that, but also understand that consistency and a positive attitude is where you're going to find success. And many realtors quit, and then many realtors when they're about to quit, that's when you realize is actually when you're about to find success. So stay really consistent and stay true to yourself. But I want to switch to mom mode for a second. I'm going to tell you what's made me the most successful. And I tell my kids this all the time, it's who your friends are. And they always say success by affiliation. And it doesn't mean be unauthentic and, try to social climb your way up to the top. It just means, you got to let go of any negative vibes that are around you. You have to, because that's going to pull you down. So make sure that your group is supportive, because during those really difficult times, and you will have difficult times, and please understand that they will pass, the people that are going to help you get through that are the people closest to you. So make sure that those people who are closest to you really actually want the best for you.
Speaking of skills, experience, opportunities, I'm very much agreeing with what all my fellow panelists have echoed so far. I think one of the things that we've all mentioned in another way or form is essentially one of the skills that I think gets overlooked, especially in education, are your soft skills, your ability to talk, present, speak, not necessarily on a panel, but on an individual level, being able to really understand and hear what someone else is saying, because hard skills can be learned. So I'm not saying they don't help. They obviously help, and there is a threshold in which you need for different jobs, fields, and degrees. But your soft skills, like Eric has talked about and what's happened in my career as well, they're what can get you through the door. They're what can give you the opportunity. So learning how to present yourself, no matter how introverted you might think you are, is important, because maybe you want to use less words. But with less words, speak with them more. Make them speak louder. Have yourself project in a different way. You don't have to know how to give a speech in front of 100 people or 1,000 people. Sometimes you just know how to talk to one person. So I would say learn your interview skills. Learn how to, for lack of better words, learn how to sell yourself and really project how you are, what your strengths are, even if it's not what everybody else thinks they are. You need to understand where you stand in the field, whether it's early on, later on, or maybe you consider yourself an expert. You need to know how to really project those things. And when it comes to opportunities, sometimes it's easier to think you're on the right path than to take the opportunity that's scarier, or to take the opportunity that you don't know if it's going to pan out. I know from my own fair share of experiences, I've missed out on more by not being willing to take that step. Yeah, everybody talks about it, but sometimes that opportunity is a lot more simple, where it's just somebody saying, hey, do you want to intern for, my uncle, or did you want to try working at this place? Or, hey, I know someone who works there. Sometimes you don't want to basically step on toes, or you feel like you don't want to basically make things harder for them, but sometimes all it takes is you asking. Asking is sometimes all you need.
So I think in medicine, once you get into medical school, then you're like on a path. Once you're in, you're going to be a doctor. So in high school, what you could do is you really want to find if you're interested in it. So some things you could do are like people do volunteer at hospitals, like the candy stripers. You know, you volunteer at clinics. I would say if in college, if would look good for your application would be like if you were involved in a research project, even having your name on the research paper, that would stand out because that's not a common thing that a lot of applicants do. But in high school, at least, I think you're just trying to figure out if you like medicine. So I think for medicine, you have to like science. Like there's just way too much science to not like science and be a doctor. Like there's so much. So you're science-based and you enjoy helping people, and then you just gotta do a couple volunteer things. In college, try to do some research with any paper that could be medically relevant, and that would be super helpful for your application. And then once you're in med school, you're kind of cruising that highway to becoming the doctor. So, yeah.
Well, that wraps up our 2025 Career and Internship Expo panel. A huge thank you to all of our amazing panelists for sharing their experiences, insights, and advice. We appreciate you all taking the time to help us explore different career paths and what it takes to succeed in various fields. To all our students, we hope this gave you some inspiration and ideas for your own future. Remember, your career journey doesn't have to be a straight path. Stay curious, take opportunities when they come, and don't be afraid to explore different options. Many other representatives from different careers will be in the CTE building from 4th period until 6th for the Career Internship Expo. If you're looking for further career exploration, definitely check it out. This has been Grace McCloskey from Apache News. Have an amazing day, everyone.